if I'm in a parking lot of whatever large company that's out there and I drop, 15 or 20 rubber duckies and somebody comes in and, the inclination, the human nature of that is like, I'm curious, like, what if it has something on it I want to see and it's juicy, right? Like, of course I want to keep this. So you pop it into the thumb drive and then we were talking about the guy else on the website. He had one and he wrote some script and he's like, hey, try it. I was skeptical at first, but I trust him. So I figured whatever he put on my computer, he would take off. So he did. So I popped it in there and like within 3 seconds, it had a little black script box that was, by the time I looked to even think to click, it was gone because the keylogger wrote some script. So I went and walked back to his desk and he had access to my computer.
Welcome to the Bourbon Friday Show. I'm your host, Nick Niehaus, and I'm talking to Tony Bryan, who's the Executive Director of CyberUp. Before we get into things, I just want to say, let's go Blues. I am super excited.
Absolutely,
right?
Let's go Blues.
Went to the watch party last night. That was a lot of fun. Well, that's out of the way, right? So Tony, let's talk about the important stuff here, right? So tell me about CyberUp a little bit.
So we are a nonprofit headquartered here in downtown St. Louis. We're out at T-Rex.
Okay.
Our mission is to close the cybersecurity skills gap by training the workforce of today and inspiring the workforce of tomorrow.
Very cool.
So we do that through our apprenticeship program. We were the third apprenticeship program created in the country, which is really great that it happened here in our backyard. And then we engage middle school and high school students in camps, clubs, and competitions.
Very cool. Okay, so let's start with the problem a little bit because I want to understand this better.
Yeah.
Talking about cybersecurity, this is obviously an exploding
Big subject,
field,
absolutely.
right? So first of all, I guess, why do we have such a shortage? And let's just start there. I guess, why is there such a shortage?
That's a great question. So the shortage I think cybersecurity has been around for a really long time, right?
Sure.
I just don't think it was called that. And over the last several years with academia, and I think with just a larger focus on protecting networks, it became more prevalent within that space to go. And companies like MasterCard and big organizations are making and dedicating entire teams and entities to do this. And so in order to staff and man that, it created a gap in availability of talent. So really that's just where it's come from. This emergence of the idea of protecting networks and I think varying different products and softwares that are out there that exist.
Sure. Well, it almost sounds like the idea of security in general has really changed with the internet, right? I mean, we talk a lot now about, people aren't getting robbed, and physically as much anymore, but they're having their identities stolen at much higher rates, right? So what are some of the skills necessary? Like, what kind of things are you teaching people to help them contribute to this?
So for our program specifically, we focus our recruitment on 3 different demographics. So it's women, people of color, and veterans. Okay. There's a known societal and statistics that back that. So 11% of the workforce is represented by women. 13% of the workforce is represented by people of color, and then veterans primarily around the security clearance and just getting into government roles. That makes that transition much easier.
Interesting. Okay.
From a skill set, Jeannie, the CEO of IBM, came up with a term called new collar, right? So they were all familiar, blue collar, white collar type of roles. This idea of new collar is that individuals don't necessarily have to have a degree. You can teach them skills, right? So those are networking, routers, switches, from a hardening your perimeter standpoint, from reading logs and managing data and some of that coding aspect behind it. I can teach individuals those hard skills that don't necessarily require a degree per se, and put them into jobs where they're successful.
Gotcha. Very cool. Yeah, I mean, that's just something I think is kind of crazy nowadays is that some of these, types of skills that I think traditionally were like you had to for sure go to like engineering school to acquire. Now, almost anybody can pick up through these kinds of programs, right? And since there is such a shortage, I mean, it's probably a good thing that we don't have to send people to a 4-year program to put them in these positions, right?
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about the younger side of this, right? So you say you work with a lot of youth, right? I guess first of all, why is that important? Why is it important to start getting kids engaged in these topics early on?
It's a great question. So for us, when we decided we wanted to focus on middle school and high school students, for us, it was just a long-term approach.
Okay.
The more often you're getting in front of a kid and introducing code or networking or different tactics that are there, it sparks that interest and maybe a fire. I mean, kids are every day playing video games, Fortnite, whatever other games that exist.
Sure.
Self-proclaimed, I love the video game myself. Yeah. So, they're playing video games and they're on technology constantly. It's important for them to learn how to protect that. So if we're getting in front of them early, encouraging school districts and after-school programs to find good outlets for their students to do, then we're helping them either pursue college, right? We are very fortunate in the St. Louis market to have great institutions. We've got 2-year programs. St. Louis Community College, St. Charles Community College, Southwestern Illinois College all have 2-year degree programs where somebody can get a networking certification and walk out making between $50,000 and $65,000 a year.
That's great.
We've got great 4-year programs, Fontbonne, Maryville, Webster University, Lindenwood University, that all have 4-year degrees that are now specifically focused on cybersecurity skills.
Really? Okay.
UMSL as well. McKendree, trying to cover the gamut of McKendree and the different region. But all of them have great degrees where they're training students. If we flip that, there are a lot of individuals that live in our region that college might not be an option, right? They might not have the grades, they might not have financial resources to do that. So there are alternative programs like apprenticeship, boot camps, lots of other options that are out there. And so we're proud to be part of that talent ecosystem, if you will, that exists and providing opportunities for those that maybe wouldn't have an option to go to college.
Yeah, that's great. I think it's great to focus on supporting the people, obviously, that don't have the same opportunities the rest of us do. So give me some of the details of what a program like this would look like. So if you got some students you're working with, are you going into the schools? Or are they coming to you? I mean, how does that part
Great
work?
question. So for us, we actually have some camps coming up here in the next few weeks. We're out at McKendree University next week for a camp, and then in July we're out at Rankin University, which we've done in the last 2 years at a college level, and we partner with individual school districts for the same camp. So Cyber Patriot is who we've partnered with. They've got a very robust curriculum, if you will. My favorite word, robust. Robust curriculum, but it takes middle school, high school kids through the idea of a help desk administrator. So they're finding vulnerabilities in networks and websites, and then they identify those and earn skills. So over the course of that 5 days, Monday, kind of dry, right? There's some of the important stuff around cyberbullying and cyber ethics, and if we're going to teach you to hack and get into networks, there's that component of you should use it for good. Use your skills for good is not bad. And then day after day, it gets a little more complex. And then on Fridays, the students come in and they actually compete against one another. And whoever earns the most points is deemed winner. We give them a little prize and send them off for that. Very cool. The next step behind that, it's easy to spark an interest, right? Kids are malleable and love technology. So, what's that next step? Cyber Patriot as a whole has a national competition that runs from November to March. There were 5,500 teams, I think, this past year that competed across the country. So a big number. It's very well funded. So they've got a great infrastructure behind it. It's low cost of entry, so I think it's $250 a team to register, and there's no additional cost other than like computers a school probably already has. So that's a great resource, but that still is time sensitive, November to March. So we're really looking at, on our end, what is the best way to engage a student from start of the school year to the end of the school year, taking into account curriculum that states are providing down and mandating for degree completion, and what's accessible, whether it be an in-school type of curriculum or an after-school. We could partner with a nonprofit. And so we're looking at a couple different options of how we would do that. There happens to be a startup here that's currently in 630 in their accelerator that has a platform, I think, that would serve that well. Right now it is currently geared towards college level students. So I think it would be, we could transfer that down into a high school setting. I love competition as much as the next person. Let's Go Blues, the sports. So this idea of where you have students competing against one another and declaring a winner, right? So there are lots of kids today that don't play sports. So how do you still foster that level of competition? So this idea of a cyber league to us, I think, would be a great way to do that. Yeah,
that's awesome. Very cool. Well, so one question I have to ask you is a little bit more fun here. Is I think a lot of people, when we think of cybersecurity, you think back to the old movies of somebody like defending against a hacker, right? And they're sitting in a computer terminal and they're typing really fast, and the other guy's typing really fast, and it's almost like they're kind of fighting each other, right? I don't believe that's actually how it works, right?
No.
So what does that job actually look like? And what kind of stuff are we actually doing on a day-to-day basis?
So we've struggled with this, right? So like we get in front of a group of high school students or middle school students, and you need to sell the sizzle, right?
Yeah.
What is it that I'm putting in front of a student that gets them motivated? Like, that's something I want to do. It's really lots of ones and twos and green screen, right? That's there. And then you have this idea in your head that's worked up around war games, where you have this amazing facility that exists, or Avengers, they've got this hub of activity. Those exist, right? There are companies that have SOC, Security Operations Centers, that are managing that. But from a day-to-day, what they're tracking in those environments are logs. They've got software that's sitting in the back end that's monitoring networks and really seeing any irregularities that would be normal. And there was another 630 platform that was here, and a company, you hired them and they would come in and they would establish what does their normal look like. So is that 10 users that sit in your network, or 10 administrators? Is it 150 email accounts? Is it 6 websites? And then throughout that SOC environment, they're able to say, okay, well, we went from 10 users to now we have 11. Why?
Okay.
So do some digging, figure out where that's at. So that would probably be considered on the incident response side to figure out, okay, where did the 11 come from? Is it normal? Is it not normal?
Yeah.
If it isn't normal, then what do we do? How do we shut it down? How do we find it? And what do we do from there?
Gotcha. Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does make sense. Yeah. Yeah, I think the movies have kind of
they do a good job.
tricked us a little
they
in
do
terms
a really
of what
good
that
job.
really looks like, right? Well, let's talk about the money behind this a little bit, right? So I think that if you're going to get into one of these jobs, obviously you're thinking about how much what is my earning potential here?
Yeah.
So if you can tell us a little bit about, you mentioned the 2-year program leading to jobs that can pay 50,000+, which I think is great. What's the high end of that, I guess? And if you maybe have an example of somebody that's kind of come from another career and switched into this and has benefited from that.
Yeah. So I mean, there's a great website. So if you're interested, write this down. Cyberseek.org.
Okay.
So it's funded. It pulls in Indeed job descriptions, or Glassdoor job descriptions. It takes a map and it aggregates that into one really interactive map that shows jobs that are available in states, metropolitan areas, and outlines that. And then it actually takes those careers and it'll pinpoint the NIST framework, National Institute for Standards and Technology. They've created a cybersecurity workforce framework. Okay. So it has 7 distinct buckets or spaces you can get into within cybersecurity. Really? Okay. So each one of those has a particular salary. So these are the skills that are outlined. This is what you would be able to do. And this is a potential salary. What's that? So for our specific example, for us, all of our apprentices generally start at about $15 an hour, and that scales over the course of their apprenticeship. So that averages out to about $39,000 a year to start. Most of our apprentices, when they're transitioning out, go from that $39,000 to at least $55,000, if not more. Wow. So that's a pretty big jump from in a 12-month period. From a market demand, the salaries are great because there is such a deficit in talent. Somebody who puts, I'm a cybersecurity analyst or a pen tester onto their LinkedIn profile per se. There's lots of recruiters that are out there looking for their talent. And so, it's very easy to jump from a place to a place and increase a 10,000 here, a 10,000 there, and so some of that's tied to certifications or particular skill set, like Liam Neeson that you would have for that. So those type of things are great. So, I mean, I've seen easily those salaries get into the 6 figures pretty quick.
Really? Okay. Yeah. Very cool. So who do you typically end up working with? So when people come to this apprentice program, I know you have the demographics kind of targeting. Yeah. Are you seeing any patterns there? I mean, is there a kind of person or a previous career that tends to work well with the program?
So our current bench of candidates ranges from 19 to 66.
Wow. Okay.
We have male, female, black, white, master's degrees, bachelor's degrees, associate's degrees, high school diplomas, and GEDs. Okay, so we're 100% across the board in that. I think what it is drawing candidates to is those that have general curiosity, right? There is this, cybersecurity is great. It's one of those things that, you have a job that's bigger than you. Right, so you're protecting a network, and if you take it a step further, there's national security to there, and there's so many layers. So for those that are driven as a mission-focused type of individual, it's a great career field that you can get into. So a lot of our candidates have that aspect of just kind of give back, mission-oriented, want to be part of something a little bit larger.
That's cool.
And honestly, I think the career opportunity, right, where you're hearing from 55, and it doesn't take long to go to 6 figures.
Wow.
is attractive. It's lucrative, right?
Yeah.
I've been in the nonprofit space for 10 years and think, wow, that's really great. That's a
I
great
want
career
that job.
field.
That's
So
cool. I like it. All right. Well, so obviously we got people out there. I mean, this all sounds pretty appealing. So is there an application process, or how does somebody get in touch with you and apply for the program?
So our first step for us is an info session.
Okay.
The info session is really the best way for us to control that ebb and flow, right?
Okay.
So there has been a really high demand for entry into the program, which is great. We have finite resources, and there are finite number of companies that are hiring candidates. So we want to make sure that we're not just going to collect applicants and people just to get them onto a bench and sit and wait.
Gotcha.
Because I wouldn't want it done to me, and I wouldn't want to do that to somebody else. So that info session is that first step. We don't have one scheduled right now. Because we've got a bench, we want to clear some of that first. So probably by the fall timeframe, we'll open up another info session for applicants. So info session is first step. Second step is we bring everybody in for an in-person interview.
Okay.
And then they do an assessment in between there. So it's personality, some technical skills, but there's really not a weed out process, right? The idea is that we make it lots of steps within that, so there's some self-selection out of it. We want those that are committed, that have an interest and really that desire to go through it. It's not overly cumbersome, but it's definitely rigorous.
Sure. Yeah.
So assessment score doesn't necessarily matter. We haven't turned anybody away. We maybe referred somebody to another organization that would be a good first step to come to us. The interview is a great way for us to get to know the individual, see where they're coming from, and really get a better sense of who they are. We have some rubric we work out between the assessment and that, and then we determine where's the best starting point for our apprenticeship program. We've, based off of the range of candidates that we have, everybody has started their journey with us in a very different spot. Some of those are homegrown, self-taught people that are doing technical things in their free time, so they might not necessarily need extra support. They just need tweak a resume, work on some technical interviews, and then we can put them into a role.
Okay.
But somebody who maybe has a GED or high school diploma would need some additional support. So we do have a pre-apprenticeship program that we would run them through. It's an 8-week crash course. So a lot of soft skill prep, LinkedIn, soft skill. So when their number's called for that interview, they're putting their best foot forward.
Gotcha.
We cover the NIST framework. So it is in the world of auditing, right? So you have PCI, which is covering banking. You have HIPAA, which is covering healthcare.
Sure.
The NIST framework is that first kind of standardization of what is a minimum viable product that any company, if I'm a real estate firm or a large company, that I could take this platform, put it into it, and see where I'm at, and then make decisions on what I want to do to minimize my risk or protect my network.
Gotcha.
So we do that, and it actually we do a NIST audit within that. So we're teaching them to do public speaking, auditing skills, really around the lens of consulting, right? I think the interpersonal communication skills are important for any role or any job you're going to get into, especially in this space. I've heard horror stories from our partners that say, you walk down the hall at work and you're the person that everybody shies away from because you clicked an email or you clicked this website that may be malicious. And you're like, I'm sorry, like they're monitoring the traffic all the time. But having that ability to be personable with those individuals is important.
Gotcha.
And then we also cover IT fundamentals. So they do want a certification from that as well.
Very cool. All right. Well, last question then is, somebody wants to sign up for it, is just go to the website, or what's the contact information?
So our website is www, which is a given, CyberUp.org. We just recently rebranded. We were Midwest Cyber Center. Great name. We definitely, the definition in our world of what a center has just evolved, right?
Gotcha.
So a lot of the center type of environments are sitting in universities, and there's a lot of academic research behind that, and degree programs, and that isn't necessarily what we were doing. So we weren't a place, and so when we looked at the name change, we wanted something that was fun, right? So I think our little cyber dude, everybody calls him Mega Man, right? So our little cyber dude is really cool. We call him Cy in the office, so Cy is great. It gives our candidates something really proud to put on a shirt or carry around that is something rad. And it's really resonated well with our employer partners and our school district partners we're working with because it's fun.
It is fun, yeah. Really, I saw the new space recently too. It looks great.
We did, yeah. We took a space. We were we were always looking for classrooms, right, that we were doing it. And so the space on the main floor of T-Rex happened to open up. It had a classroom in the back of it, which was great.
Perfect.
So it just, with all the excitement of things that are happening downtown, all the things that are happening in T-Rex and in GA and all of these other components, it made a lot of sense for us from a mission standpoint. T-Rex is central, right? If I'm east of here in Illinois, it's central and it's fairly easy to get to. There's Madison County Transit comes over here all the time. There's metro stations in Belleville and Scott Air Force Base to get here. And if I'm west of here, it's easy to get for that.
Sure.
So public transportation is aplenty. So it allows us to serve all kinds of people within our bucket to get to our office.
Well, it's great. Worked out well.
Yeah.
Very cool. We got a couple minutes left, so at this
right.
point, we're going to invite Eric on. And Eric is the founder of Bourbon Friday, so we're excited to talk with him. And he's going to tell us what we're drinking today. What do we got?
Sure. We are drinking Legent. And Legent is kind of an interesting thing. I believe it was about 5 years ago that Suntory acquired the Jim Beam brand. And this is the first time collaboration between Jim Beam and the main Suntory. This is Fredno, who is the big master distiller at Jim Beam. He's sort of like picking the flavor profile, but what Suntory is known for is blending. Okay. So this is a 5th generation Japanese master blender, like picking these out and blending whiskeys to create this product. But why this is actually here is I was kind of looking into bourbon and cybersecurity. And one of the instances that I found was there was a senior network architect named Eamon Hogue that was at DEF CON, which is one of the world's largest hacker and cybersecurity conferences. He was there a few years ago, and one of their hacking examples was hacking a distillery. And something that we often don't think about in cybersecurity, we always think data security and identity theft and all of this. Well, what happens if somebody can get access to the manufacturing floor or distilling floor of a distillery? Bad things happen because you're talking about a flammable, explosive liquid, pressure, all of that. Well, they were able to hack this virtually, and that made him super nervous. So basically, because you're dealing with these giant companies, now Jim Beam's the largest bourbon distiller in the United States, and Suntory is one of the largest distilleries worldwide. What happens, because you need to be able to open up your systems to outside companies, so whether that's supply chain or whatever. So yeah, they are making huge efforts because this is something we never think about is, oh no, you cannot just steal somebody's information. You could actually do huge damage and harm to facilities and people and all of that. Just because.
Hadn't thought about that before.
I didn't either until I sort of started looking into it, and I'm like,
something else
oh wow.
Scared of, right?
Well,
there was a story of one of our. I was doing a panel with an individual for a local company, and he was hired by a manufacturing company that made food. And so they came in after hours and were checking machines. And in most manufacturing plants, everything's automated, right? Sure. So if you're servicing it, you could do a network virtually and dial in. Well, as they're walking through the plant, they noticed that one of the ovens was open. And so they were getting ready to kind of click log and shut it so it wouldn't be hacked. But in the process of that, there was a moment of they turned white and there was a panic, and they realized that it only shuts down for one of two reasons, and one of it is cleaning. So somebody was actually in the oven. Ooh. And so they were seconds away from punching it in. So if they would have tried to protect the network from that person, that there would have been some fatalities and not great things that happened. So it is more.
Oh yeah.
As well.
Yeah. It was wild, just something I like. Oh yeah, right. Yeah. And I mean, you hear about that as far as the grid and nuclear power plants and that, but it's even thinking about something. Oh no, it's just a distillery.
Yeah.
Oh no.
For sure.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, on that note,
sorry, didn't mean to bring it around. I was I thought it was cool.
It's interesting.
That it's it's everywhere. This is, it was
sure.
more along, that's what I'm trying to get across.
Yeah.
Across every industry that this is going to become more and more important.
I look back before I took this job 3 years ago, like cybersecurity. I mean, I think everybody knows what cybersecurity is, but I didn't understand the inner workings of it.
Right.
And it's kind of scary when we, as humans, we like our conveniences, right? Our Alexas and our Rings and all of these, our refrigerators, like all of those touch points now become hackable. And somebody's listening. So like, it gets deep. And that part frightens me a little bit. I'm not on the flip of like super extreme about it, but it's definitely.
We have the little window things that cover up the camera in our laptops, you know, and all the time people are always like, "Whoa, why do you do that?" And we're like, "Because your camera can get hacked and you won't even know," you know. And they're like, "Really? That can happen?" It's like, oh, you have no. If you don't know that, like, there's all kinds of stuff you don't know about, right?
There's lots of great videos and content that's out there. Like if you're interested in learning about hacking, just YouTube, Reddit. There's so many resources that are out there. But there's a little thing Hack5 makes. They call it a rubber ducky. So it's literally a USB drive, and it looks like every other USB drive you'd have, and it has a little micro SD card in it that you can go and write keyloggers and all this little script into it. So if I'm in a parking lot of whatever large company that's out there, and I drop 15 or 20 rubber duckies, and somebody comes in, and the inclination, the human nature of that is like, I'm curious, like, what if it has something on it I want to see, and it's juicy, right? Like, of course I want to keep this. So you pop it into the thumb drive, and then like we were talking about the guy else on the website. He had one, and he wrote some script, and he's like, "Hey, try it." I was skeptical at first, but I trust him, so I figured whatever he put on my computer, he would take off. So he did. So I popped it in there, and like within 3 seconds, it had a little black script box that was, by the time I looked to even think to click, it was gone, because the keylogger wrote some script. So I went and walked back to his desk, and he had access to my computer.
Wow!
All within 7 seconds. And if I would have like put it in and like looked away and looked around, I never would have noticed it was there.
Wow. Well, that's fun. Yeah.
So, I think I just broke Nick.
Got things to think about now. All right, very cool. Eric, as always, thank you for joining us and sharing all those events with us. Tony, thank you so much for having the show today. Yeah, it was a good time. For those of you tuning in, we thank you again for watching the Bourbon Friday show. We are live here at Kovo every Friday at 4:30. So we want to thank Kovo for supporting us by allowing us to have the event here. It's always a lot of fun. I want to thank Ian Brown for stepping in for Vanessa this week and running the show behind the scenes. We definitely appreciate his talent producing the show. And thank you to EQ for streaming the show every single week. And as we sign off, of course, let's go Blues. We got one win left. Very excited. Hopefully we'll be Stanley Cup champions the next time we're on the show here. So please join us again next Friday at 4:30 for the Bourbon Friday show. And thanks for watching.
Hey, thanks for watching. We truly hope you enjoyed it. Please like and share this episode. And if you haven't yet, hit that subscribe button. It really helps us out. To stay up to date, follow us on social. We are at Bourbon Fridays on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, and TikTok. See you next time.